My boyfriend would not hold my hand at school until his friend said, "Your girl is getting stolen." And I want to tell you about the week after that sentence because the week was where I learned everything I needed to learn about what I had been inside of for 8 months. His name was Jared. We were juniors. We had been together since the beginning of the school year, 8 months. He had been affectionate at home, affectionate when we were alone, affectionate at the mall, not affectionate at school. At school, we were the kind of couple where you knew they were together, but you did not see evidence of it in the hallways. I had brought it up once in October. He said he did not like public displays. I said okay. I filed it under preferences I was willing to accommodate. In April, a junior named Trevor transferred into our school. Trevor was friendly. He talked to me in the halls and in our shared science class. He asked me to study once, and I said yes because I was planning to study anyway. Trevor was pleasant and did not ask me for anything beyond studying. Jared knew Trevor was talking to me. Jared had been watching. Jared had not said anything. Then Jared's friend Marcus said the sentence. In the cafeteria, at the table where Jared and his friends sat, Marcus leaned over and said, "Your girl is getting stolen." He meant Trevor. He had seen Trevor walking me to science class the previous day when Jared was not in the hall. The next morning, Jared found me between first and second period in the hallway near the math wing. He reached for my hand. He laced his fingers through mine. He walked me all the way to my classroom door. He turned me toward him and kissed me on the mouth in front of approximately 40 students during passing period. 8 months. 8 months of nothing in the halls. 8 months of walking next to each other like polite strangers. And then this. I want to tell you what I felt. I did not feel flattered. I did not feel chosen. I felt a specific thing that was the feeling of being marked. He was not holding my hand because he wanted to hold my hand. He was holding my hand because Marcus had told him another boy was in the vicinity, and he was establishing to the hallway that I was his. The gesture was for the hallway and not for me. I did not know about Marcus's sentence yet. I would not learn the exact words until 2 days later. All I knew that morning was that something had changed, and I did not trust the change. I walked into my classroom. I sat down. I made a decision. I was not going to react. I was not going to get excited or grateful or confused out loud. I was going to watch. I was going to pay attention to exactly when the affection showed up and exactly when it disappeared, and I was going to see if there was a pattern. Day 2. Before second period, Jared and I were walking from the main building toward the science hall. Trevor was at his locker about 20 feet ahead of us. Jared reached for my hand. He held it the entire length of the hallway. We turned the corner. Trevor was no longer in sight. Jared let go, like a light switch. Trevor visible, hand on. Trevor gone, hand off. At lunch that same day, Trevor walked through the cafeteria on his way to the vending machines on the far wall. He was not coming toward us. He was not looking at us. Jared put his arm around my shoulders. He pulled me closer on the bench. He kept his arm there the entire time Trevor was in the cafeteria. Trevor bought a drink and walked back out. Jared's arm came off my shoulders. He went back to eating and talking to his friends like nothing had happened. During fifth period, Jared and I had a free block at the same time. Trevor was in the art building on the other side of campus. We sat next to each other in the common area for the entire period. He did not touch me once. We sat there like we had sat for the previous 8 months, like two people who happened to be next to each other. Day 3, the same patterns repeated. Before second period, Trevor was in the hall and Jared grabbed my hand. During the class period when Trevor was in a different building, Jared did not touch me. At lunch when Trevor walked past, Jared's hand found mine until Trevor moved on, and then he let go. Every single time, like clockwork. At lunch on day 2, Una sat down across from me with her tray and looked at Jared's hand on my shoulder. Trevor had just walked past, and she said, "Since when does Jared do that in public?" I said I was figuring that out. She thought about it. Then she said, "Now that you say it, he was all over you when we walked past Trevor's locker yesterday, but I did not see him touch you once during free period." She had noticed the same pattern without me telling her what to look for. The pattern was real. Other people could see it. And Trevor, through all of this, was exactly the same person he had been since April. He waved to me the same way he always had. He stopped by my desk in science class and said, "Hey, did you finish the worksheet? I am stuck on number 7. I told him what I thought the answer was. He said thank you and walked back to his seat. He did not flirt. He did not look at Jared to see if Jared was watching. He was just a person being friendly. His consistency was the thing that made Jared's inconsistency impossible to ignore. Trevor was not performing for anyone. Jared was performing for everyone. By the end of day 3, I had the instances. I had the pattern. I had outside confirmation from Una, but I was missing the why. I needed to understand what had made Jared suddenly decide that touching me in public was necessary after 8 months. The answer was going to come from the person who had been sitting next to him when the switch flipped. I found Marcus in the library during free period. I pulled out the chair across from him. I said, "I want you to tell me exactly what you said to Jared on Monday in the cafeteria." He said, "You heard about that?" I said, "I want to hear it from you, the exact words." He said, "I told him your girl is getting stolen." I said, "Those specific words." He said, "Those specific words." I said, "Why did you say that?" He said, "I was looking out for him. I saw Trevor walking with you, and I figured Jared should know so he could do something about it." I said, "Do what about it?" He said, "Whatever guys do when another guy is circling, not let her get stolen." I said, "Marcus, I am not a car." He said, "I know that." I said, "You used the word stolen. Stolen is a word that applies to objects. You looked at me and you looked at Trevor and you saw an object in danger of being taken from its owner. The something was me. The someone else was Jared." I said, "Trevor was not stealing me. Trevor asked me about homework. There was no theft happening because there was nothing available to steal because I am a person, and I decide where I go and who I talk to." He said, "I was just saying it the way we say it." I said, "Who is we?" He said, "Guys." I said, "So when guys talk about their friends' girlfriends, they talk about them like things that can be stolen." He said, "That is not what I meant." I said, "That is what the words mean. I know you were not trying to be mean. I know you thought you were doing a nice thing for your friend, but the nice thing you thought you were doing was warning him that his property was being taken, and the property was me." He said, "I am sorry. I did not think about it that way." I said, "I know you did not. That is also the problem. You did not have to think about it because it is so normal to talk about girls that way, that the words came out without any thought at all." I said, "I do not blame you personally. You are a symptom of something bigger. But I need you to understand that every time you say something like, 'Your girl is getting stolen' to a boy about about a girl, you are training both of them. You are training the boy to see the girl as something he owns, and you are training yourself to see her that way too. And the girl never even gets to be in the room when it happens. She just gets the result, which in my case was 8 months of no hand-holding, followed by a week of hand-holding that had nothing to do with me. He said, I am going to think about that. I said, thank you. Now I had everything. The exact words. The exact reason. Confirmation that Jared's sudden change was a direct response to Marcus telling him another boy was near me. It was not affection. It was not growth. It was a territorial response to a territorial warning. The system worked like this. Holding my hand in public when there was no threat meant affection. Affection in front of his friends meant soft. Soft meant whipped. So he did not hold my hand. But holding my hand when there was a threat meant territory. Territory meant in control. In control meant respected. So he held my hand. The hand-holding was never about me. The absence of hand-holding was never about me either. Both were about Jared's relationship with how other people saw him. I was furniture that got rearranged depending on who was coming over. The next day at lunch, I sat down next to Jared. His friends were around us. The cafeteria was loud. Jared reached for my hand under the table. I pulled it away, gently. I just moved it out of his reach and placed it in my lap. He said, what is wrong? I said, I know what Marcus said to you. I know why you have been holding my hand this week. He said, I have been holding your hand because I wanted to. I said, you have been holding it specifically in the moments Trevor has been visible. I said I had been tracking. I listed the instances. Tuesday hallway, hand on. Turn the corner, hand off. Tuesday cafeteria, arm on when Trevor walked past, arm off when he left. Tuesday free period, Trevor in another building, nothing. Wednesday the same, every single time. He did not argue. The specificity made it impossible to argue because I was not giving him a feeling to dismiss. I was giving him data. I said, were you affectionate with me at school before this week? He said, I was a little. I said, Jared. He said, no. I said, why not? He said, I did not want people to think I was whipped. I said, whipped, like your girlfriend controls you. He said, kind of. I said, but holding my hand this week when Trevor was around did not make you look controlled. He said, no. I said, why not? He could not say it, so I said it. Because this week holding my hand was defending territory. The other 8 months holding my hand would have been affection. Affection looks weak and territory looks strong. That is what you have been telling me for 8 months without telling me. He was quiet for a long time. He said, that is a lot to take in. I said, yes, it is. He said, what are you saying? I said, I am saying I want to break up. He said, because of this? I said, because of what this tells me about how you see me and what you see yourself as defending. He said, I do not know how to fix this. I said, I do not want you to fix this right now. I want you to think about it. After you have thought about it, if you want to talk to me, we can talk. But right now, I want to break up because I do not want to be the cargo in someone else's hallway. He said, you are not cargo to me. I could hear in his voice that he believed it. That made it worse. Because the fact that he believed it meant he could not see what I could see. He could not see that his own hands had been telling me the truth his mouth never would. I said, I was when Marcus said the sentence. I was not before he said it because I did not require defending. The fact that Marcus saying a sentence made you start holding my hand at school means what you were defending was your claim. I do not want to be a claim. I stood up. I picked up my lunch tray. I walked across the cafeteria to the table where Yuna was sitting. I pulled out the chair next to her. I sat down. I did not look back at Jared's table because looking back would have been for him and not for me. And I had just spent a week watching someone do things for other people instead of for me, and I was done being part of that. Yuna said, what happened? I said, I will tell you after school. She nodded. She slid her bag of chips toward me. She said, okay. 2 weeks later, Jared sent me a text saying he had thought about it and he wanted to apologize properly. I read it. I did not respond. 2 months after that, he sent another one, longer. He said he was not expecting a response. He said he had been thinking about what I said for 2 months and he had been trying to do better. I read it. I saved it. I did not respond. I saved it because I wanted to remember that sometimes the thing you say to someone changes them, even if you never see the change directly. Sometimes you plant something and walk away and never find out if it grew. 3 years later, I was at a college event. Someone called my name. I turned around. Jared. He looked different the way everyone looks different between 17 and 20. He hugged me. A real one. He said, thank you. I said, for what? He said, for what you said in the cafeteria that day. It changed how I saw a lot of things. I have been a different kind of boyfriend since then. I did not want to not say it when I had the chance. I said, I am glad. He said, I did not know how much of it had landed at the time. I said, I was 17. He said, so was I. I said, yes, that is the point. He said, thank you again. I said, you are welcome. We hugged. He went back to his group. I went back to mine. Standing there watching him walk away, I realized the story had changed shape in my head. Up until that hug, I had thought of it as the story of a breakup. But it was never about a breakup. It was about what happens when someone tells the truth clearly enough that the truth survives inside the person who needed to hear it. It survives past the cafeteria and past the summer and past graduation and past 3 years of not talking. It just sits there, doing its work, long after you walked away. I have thought about that sentence so many times. Your girl is getting stolen. I have thought about all the girls who have been described that way by boys talking to other boys. I have thought about how many of them noticed the pattern and how many did not. I think I knew to notice because I had been paying attention for 8 months to what Jared did and did not do in public, and I had already been gathering data without knowing I was gathering it. That is the thing I want to tell younger girls if I could tell them anything. You are always gathering data, even when you think you are not. Trust the data.